All right, everybody, welcome back to the Molds That Make Fatherhood. I'm your host, Anthony Johnson. I'm here with my man, Brian Pakpour, a family law attorney based on the West Coast. Currently on the East Coast right now, taking care of some family business, man. How you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm glad that I was able to get you on and you were able to make some time to get on the podcast and just talk about the new book. It's not about you, my 10 principles for a solid co-parenting foundation. And we're going to talk about specifically about the chapter on developing the schedule. I know that's a tough topic for a lot of people. People have a lot of complications when it comes to developing a schedule in their co-parenting relationship, and there's so many factors involved. But let's get a little background about you first to start on just like how you got into this lawyer thing. What was your driving force? Did you always want to be a lawyer?
No, I toyed with the idea as a kid, but never really took it seriously. Um, I actually went to college to be a teacher, changed my mind, became a journalist. I was
Oh,
doing that for about 10 years, and then I went to law school. So it was a very roundabout way of getting there. But basically, I just wanted to help people. I wanted to put myself in a position where I could help myself and others accomplish what it is that they wanted to accomplish. And law school was seemed like the best way to do that.
I like that. I like that. So was it like when you were doing journalism, you were like, ah man, this isn't it. Like this isn't
Basically, yeah, I was in a career. I love writing and I love journalism itself, but I was in a subsection of journalism that just was not very rewarding for the soul, and I knew that I had a different path, so needed to find it, and that's when I discovered the law.
that's pretty cool, man. So you what about what age did you start venturing into taking classes?
Uh, Well, I think I started law school when I was probably 32 at that time,
That's
32
pretty
or 33, yeah.
I imagine that's pretty uncommon.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of the older students in my class. Most of them were, in their early 20s. Some were in their mid 20s. Some people take like a couple years off of undergrad. Others are what they would call, there's a saying that they would say in law school, K through JD, that just, meant they went straight from kindergarten up through high school, through college, through law school. So there were some of those as well. But yeah, so I was probably among the older individuals there.
Yeah, I think that says a lot about somebody, man, to venture into something like that, after they hit 30, and which is not like a small undertaking to like just go into law school.
Well, the great thing about it, whether it's law school or something else that you do, is when you're at that age, you really appreciate it. I think there were a lot of people in my law school class, especially the K through JD crowd, who were kind of dreading it because it's like, oh man, more school. I'd been out of school for a while, and not only that, but I knew I was doing what I wanted to do. Like
Yeah.
to me, I remember the first day of law school, like it was yesterday. I was pinching myself. I was like, I can't believe I'm actually here. I'm actually doing this thing that I'm really passionate about and want to do. So taking that time off actually gives you that clarity to make sure it's really what you want to do.
Okay. Why family law?
Well, again, it goes along with why I went to law school in the first place, which is to help people, not to help like corporations, but to actually help real people with real problems. And family law is about as real as it gets. Criminal law would probably be another area, or immigration would have been another area of the law. I think the three of them are different areas that you can do, where you can sort of achieve the same ends, where you can actually help real people accomplish what it is with one.
Mhm. Okay. And thanks for sharing that background, man. Um, so let's get into the topic that the topic at hand when it comes to what you've seen in family court, dealing with, clients and people on the opposite side. When it comes to developing a schedule, let's start overarching. Like what are some of the biggest hurdles or barriers that you see getting in the way of people being able to compromise when it comes to developing a schedule with their children in their co-parenting situation?
Well, first and foremost, it's just not is not focusing on the kids, but actually on their own animosities and uh, you know evening scores, or just trying to focus on what it is that they want for themselves rather than what might be best for the kids. And so that's something that gets in the way a lot of the time. Um, the other thing would probably be people's lives. That they're not really good at reconciling other challenges that they have in their life with
Mm.
the parenting schedule that they might want. Um, and it's just unrealistic. Sometimes had people come in and say, and they might live like 2 hours away from the kids, and they're like, and I want 50-50. And it's like, well, how is that going to happen in a realistic sense with your kids? Like, how are you going to do something like 50-50? Your kids got to go to school. How are you going to get them to school? Um, so engineering your life in a way that facilitates that type of co-parenting relationship.
Yeah. So what do you think it is when somebody wants um
Oh,
50
actually,
50?
I'm sorry. Let me add one more thing.
Okay, go
Just
ahead.
a lack of awareness of um, all of the logistics of having a successful parenting plan, just not being educated about it, which is
Yeah.
fine. There are ways to get educated about it. I mean, listening to something like this or watching this or reading about it online can really help educate you about things before you go in and actually try to work out a plan with someone. Go in with a plan. And so not doing that ahead of time can be another obstacle. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, no, yeah, that's good information, man. So what do you think it is? Like, can you go deeper into, like you said, you mentioned something about people not being able to resolve other things in their lives before they go into, requesting what they want. Like, can you go a little bit more deeper with that and explain what you mean?
So do you have a living situation? Do you actually have a residential living situation that's conducive to
Mm,
having your kids for the time that you want to have your kids? Um, or are you in a home that just couldn't possibly accomplish that?
mm,
Are you able to afford it? Um, do you have a work schedule that's good? Again, it goes back to some of the unrealistic expectations some people have, where it's like, well, I work nights, and it's like, okay, and that's great that you do. I mean, that's better than not working at all. It's awesome. Somebody has to do it, right? Somebody has to
yeah,
have that kind of job. But are you able to handle the logistical headaches that might come up with parenting kids? If you have them say week on, week off, okay, during your week on, what's your plan to do what you need to do when you have the kids up?
yeah, that makes sense. Those are good things to think about that I guess not a lot of people are. What would you say, like, from your experience, how many people are going into that situation thinking rationally about those things? What's the ratio that
Some
you're
of them
dealing
do. I mean, a lot. I don't know what the ratio is, but a lot of
with?
them do. A lot of them, it's all about developing a support system. Right? Do you have family? Do you have friends or a significant other or whatever that can form part of that support system so that you can fill in those gaps? If you work nights, are there other things? So it's just about making sure that you develop that support system and that plan ahead of time so that when you go into like mediation and work on a parenting plan together, you don't look kind of like ignorant of just thinking about that. It's like, well, not only because then it's like two layers of problems, right? It's not only do you have this problem where you might not logistically be able to handle it, but then the mediator's looking at you, you haven't even thought about it. Like
Yeah,
you haven't, and if you haven't thought about this, what are some of the other things that aren't going to come up that maybe you don't really think about from time to time?
yeah. Are you advising your clients on all of those things, like the things that they may not think about? Is that something that you're doing? I mean, because you're a counsel, but you're an advisor too, right?
Yeah, I mean that's part of my job. So if
Yeah,
somebody comes in, I had a recent client come in who had a situation where he wants 50-50 and has a lot of these issues that I'm talking about. I can't get too specific, but
yeah,
and he had thought about but he was sort of blowing past them and not really addressing it. And
yeah,
it's like, no, 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 you sort of have to pull the pin out of the grenade yourself so that you can address those problems. Um, and not wait for it to come up in court or come up in mediation. So yeah, it happens all the time. I mean, um, or maybe like mom, mom wants to relocate, right? She wants to relocate with the kids, and she's relocating to a place, and she has like no support system where she's going. She doesn't know where she's going. Does she even have a job there? No, doesn't have a job. It's like, well, what's your plan? You're going to take these kids away,
Yeah.
and maybe you legitimately can, but what's going to happen when you get there? So I always ask all these questions. Someone comes in my office, I'm constantly asking these questions
Yeah.
because for no other reason than I'm going to be writing that declaration for them. I'm going to be
Right.
drafting all of this, and I'm thinking what the judge is thinking is all the questions that the judge is going to come up in their brain. I'm going, okay, they're going to want to know this. Okay, so I need to write that. So I need to counsel with my client all the time and be like, okay, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about that? So that I can put it in the declaration. And all those questions are answered before they're even asked.
Yeah. Because I find, man, and I imagine you come across this a lot too, is that when I'm coaching people, that they are making a lot of emotional decisions when it comes to how they want to parent their kids, how they want to co-parent, even when it comes down to things like the schedule and how much time they're spending with the other parent. A lot of decisions are they're based on emotion. Um,
Hmm.
and
Yeah, it's just a lot of like, well, I just want equal time. I want what's fair.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
okay, well,
it's
fair
fair.
to who? Fair to you, fair to the kid. Yeah.
Yeah. When you're dealing with people, how are you managing that as a lawyer, when you deal with people who really maybe they don't want to budge on something that may not seem really reasonable or rational in your eyes?
Hmm. I mean, I'm always honest. I'm always strict because you have to be because I always picture here's what I do to help myself. And I've done this with this. I've explained this to like new associates and stuff. I said, picture yourself in court making the argument that your client wants to make. If
Mhm.
that picture looks uncomfortable, then that's a problem. Because if you're uncomfortable, the judge is going to notice how uncomfortable you are.
Yeah,
And everybody, and not only that, but it's your reputation, right? Like that's client A. But now you got another 100 clients that are going to come after that. And if you are the kind of attorney who is known for arguing any absurd parenting plan, no matter how absurd it is and how unjustified it is, then the next time you're in there, your credibility is shot.
yeah,
And honestly, for people that represent themselves and don't have attorneys, you got to think about that. Like,
yeah,
how much are you possibly damaging your own credibility by constantly pushing a parenting plan that you can't even come up with a reasonable explanation for why it's in the kid's best interest?
yeah,
If you can't do that before you walk into court, then it's going to be tough. So yeah, I mean, I'm always doing that when I'm with my clients in the office, and then if I can't picture myself doing that and then I talk to them like, look, it's just not going to fly. Like we got to come up with a better, or
yeah,
how about we say that's my dream scenario, but Your Honor, if that doesn't work, here's option B,
yeah,
and that lends a lot more credibility. Maybe option A is possible. I don't know, but
yeah,
at least you show the judge that you're like, look, I really wish in a perfect world this is what I would have, but I also think that this would work if the court doesn't see it to do that.
yeah. Okay, so and like ultimately, like you said, like people are making these decisions sometimes and they're not really thinking about what's best for the kids per se. Um, so when it comes to the kids, like I've heard stories from kids, like I mentor kids and I'm in high schools quite a bit about how being separated and having to going back and forth is kind of like it's really stressing them out.
Mhm.
How much insight do you have, or how much are you seeing that the response from the kids and how it's affecting them, and how does that factor into your decision making process?
Well, if the kids are stressed out about going back and forth, that is an issue between the parents because the kids really it should be pretty seamless going from one house to the other. The logistics of doing it so that it is seamless is something that the parents need to handle. And if they're and so if that's happening, then that's just indicative of a problem with one or both of the parents. And
Yeah,
if one parent wants to, they can address it in court. Like I mean, my ex and I, we have a 50-50 parenting plan. We were doing a 2-2-5. We're trying out a week on, week off. But due to a number of different issues I've had with, I explained before we came on, some health concerns with my father, which is why I'm in Florida right now, instead of California. That schedule's sort of gotten thrown a little off whack. And I only bring that up as an example of, um, despite all of that, like what day my kids are with me, what days they're with mom, we try to make sure it doesn't even matter, because when they come to my house, all their stuff is there. When they go to her house, all their stuff is there. Um, and obviously not all the same stuff, the stuff that they need, their
Right.
school stuff, if they're in soccer, their soccer stuff, all that stuff. That's her, and I do that. The kids shouldn't have to worry about that stuff.
Right.
And so if that is something that kids have to constantly worry about, then that's indicative of a problem that the parents have, and they need to fix it.
Yeah. That's a good point. All right. Because it can be tough deciding what, especially in a co-parenting situation where you're trying to raise responsible kids, like what's the kid's responsibility as opposed to the parent's responsibility. And that
Hmm.
comes down to like your parenting style, how where you are in your your parenting journey. Because you know, and that's a good point you bring up about like the kids got enough to worry about. If my kids forget, like my kids both they play soccer, football, all kind of sports, basketball, and there's always something getting left at one house or the
Always,
other house, right?
always. It's inevitable. It's going to happen.
And so it really puts it in perspective, like especially for me who has to deal with it all the time when I'm trying to raise responsible kids. I forget stuff, right? So I
Right.
forget to drop something off. There's been plenty of times where I drop the kids off at school on Monday morning and they're going back with their mom after school. And I'm like, shit, man, I forgot their soccer stuff or I forgot
Yeah.
like, so how can if I'm forgetting things as an adult, somebody who's like making lists and stuff like that, how, of course my kids are going to forget their things.
Right. And the older they get, the more you can responsibility you can give to them in terms of
Right.
my daughter, my 12-year-old, my 9-year-old son, I don't know when I can give them responsibility, but my 12-year-old daughter, she has a bag that because she's almost a teenager, and so now there's certain clothes that she just stuff that she doesn't want
Mhm.
only at one house. So she'll be like, so I'll be like, all right, here's a bag, and each day when you go to school, one of us will make sure that bag ends up at the other parent's house,
Yeah.
because that's the stuff that you want to make sure goes between house to house. And you're responsible for making sure that bag has everything in it, because honestly, I wouldn't even know, right? Like, I'm not going to be able to guess what it is
Yeah.
because your stuff, I'm not going to touch it. So definitely as they get older, it can be more their responsibility, but at least you've modeled it, right? Like by then it's modeled for them,
Yeah.
that type of behavior and that type of activity.
Yeah. Yeah. Me and my kids' mom, we have a thing where like I just go and I'll let her know I'm on my way. She'll
Hmm.
unlock her car door from the window, and
Hmm.
I'll put it in the back of her car.
There you go. Yeah, I just similar to me. I have a garage code. My ex-wife will just be like, "Hey, I just stopped by and put the kid stuff in the house." I'm like, "Awesome,
Yeah,
perfect,
yeah.
great."
So what I know you said you tried the 2-2 3
We did
schedule.
the 2-2-5-5
Two two
ever
five five.
since actually separation, and then we just started trying out the week on week off, and that part of it has to do with that the stuff it started to become a real pain in the butt because we kept forgetting things
Yeah,
of this thing for school and the cleats and so I was like, well, it's all these exchanges. How about we just try week on week off and
yeah,
see if it wasn't the kids didn't care, they were fine with the schedule. It was more the parents. We were like, because I made a couple of uh, TikTok videos about it. People are like, oh my God, 2-2-5-5. The kids must be living out of a suitcase. No, they're not. They're fine. And the kids are totally fine. And it's one of the most popular parenting plans that we have. It was the parents, it was us. We were like, this is too much logistically. So let's try week on, week off. Unfortunately, we haven't really got a good taste of it again because ever since we started doing it, I've had to keep coming back to Florida to help with my dad. So we haven't had a real true week on week off for me to give you like a real idea of how much of an improvement it would be. So maybe we'll
okay,
see, maybe later.
okay. I'm interested to hear about that because that's a hot topic, man. Um, Me and my kids' mom, we have a great co-parenting relationship. We're able to communicate, but everybody
Right.
can't. Everybody's not working with that, you know.
Yeah, no, they're not. They're not. And sometimes it's not. And I know like some people take it on themselves, like it's their. It's like it's not necessarily your fault. It might be the other parent's fault, and that happens. It takes two. It's got to be both of you. If you're not both bought into it,
Yeah.
then it is what it is.
That's also something you mentioned is a great thing to think um, about, a lot of people say, oh, this is going to affect the kids. The kids are going to be stressed out. And like you said, your kids were fine. But like maybe it's the adults who are stressed out about it. And they're like, and then they're like, that's bleeding over onto the kids. And it's like some stuff that the adults need to work through. And
Yeah, I think so, and I think they don't want to admit it, but I think parents make comments like it's very passive aggressive behavior where they might make a comment that is not a direct comment about their feelings about something, but more
Mhm.
indirect and
Yeah.
hoping that the kid gets the impression of the feeling that they're having. But yeah, I've been pretty stressed about week on week off, to be honest with you, because going that long without seeing my kids is kind of stressful. Although I will say because we live close to each other and because we have a great co-parenting relationship, because of sports and other activities, we typically, it's almost never a whole week. There's always a couple times during that week where we're going to see each other. Like this year, I've been trying to teach my kid how to snowboard. So
Nice.
even on her weekends, and she's been very agreeable if you want to take him up on my Saturday. Um, and so there you go.
Awesome.
I see my kids that weekend or something like, or she'll call me and be like, "Hey, I want to take my family's having a barbecue. I want to take them to go see them on your Saturday." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Great, free Saturday for me to get some yard work done." And so she'll see the kids even though it's not her week. So
Yeah.
if you have that kind of parent co-parenting relationship, it's great.
Yeah. I've actually just recently presented that idea, the week on, week off. We do that in the summer.
Hmm.
Um, but during the school year, they get on the bus at her house, so it's like just they stay with her during the week, and I get them every Friday off the bus, and
Hmm.
I drop them off at school every Monday morning. So and that's
Hmm.
I have them every weekend, and like you said, I see them too. I'll be when football season rolls around. I'll be coaching football, helping coach football. So I'll see the kids pretty just about every day almost. And
You know what's funny about that is I've had moms because they don't want the dad. And I'm not cutting on moms or dads here, but it's always a mom. It's never well because in this situation it's usually dads that are doing like coaching football. Moms will, although not that as much anymore. Moms are getting much more involved with that. Um, but they'll file a motion so that I've actually had moms file a motion where not my mom, um, to dad can't coach the
wow,
kids team, or he can coach if he wants, but it's not going to be my kid's not going to be on that team because then he's going to be seeing him all the time. I'm like,
S-
I don't know how you,
ooh,
yeah, it happens, it happens.
man.
So, um,
That's one of those ones where you're like, if you have a good situation that you really should be like practicing gratitude, if you have a good co-parenting situation, because
exactly,
to for somebody
just
to
make
file a
peace.
motion to say, I don't want you coaching our kids team, like that's insane to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's that situation, but there was actually a TikTok that was going around where a guy sort of the guy had no interest in coaching the kids team. So right here's the flip side. There's always a flip side.
Yeah.
Here's the flip side. Dad had no interest in coaching anything, right? Like he was upset about the family law order that he got. So he went and signed up to coach the kids team so that he would see him more and just to sort of thumb his nose
Yeah.
at the court at mom. I mean, is that in the kid's best interest? Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't know enough about the situation to tell you. It's just a TikTok video. But so that scenario can cut the other.
Man, maybe I could make a video. I could duet that or something. Or I have to find
Yeah.
that video. But like, and that's when it, like you said, when it really is no longer about the kid. At that point,
Hmm.
it's about like tit for tat. Like
Exactly. It's
you
just
wrong,
getting
me,
back at them.
just getting back at the
Right.
other parent. So, which is what I find a lot when it comes to co-parenting and people that I'm coaching. because some people say, I hear a lot of people say, well, how come you don't love your kid enough to put the kid first and like, things like that. And what I'm finding is that that's not really what it is. It's not that they don't love their kid enough. And speak to this from whatever perspective you can. What I found is that it's people haven't done their own work enough to even figure out what's getting in the way of them putting the kids first. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of work that they need to do, whether it's whatever their trauma is, recovering from that, going to therapy, healing, whatever it is, so they can figure out what roadblocks are getting in the way of putting their kids first.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's their own work that they need to do, that before they even get to the custody case. It's just not, it's just for some people, it's just not any easy. It's not as easy as that. I would say most cases that I have are easy from the sense that there's usually those types of things going on that you can pinpoint for the court and be like, they're only doing this because of this, or this isn't the kid's best interest because of these logistical concerns of that parent having that time with the kid, or there's abuse or drugs or mental health or whatever other issues. Most cases are easy because they have those kinds of issues. The hardest cases I have, and these cases exist too, is where there's no bad guy. Everybody just wants what's best for the kid.
Hmm.
And they both have a totally valid reason for wanting what they and why they think what they want is in the best interest of the kid. And and those are the ones where I'm like, this is why I'm not a judge. And
Yeah,
this is why I don't want to be a judge. Because yeah, it's like I could see myself on the other side of this case arguing their point
yeah,
that's in the best. And those are the really hard. Those are the ones that I would rather there be like, can't somebody just have abused the other person than
yeah,
have something to argue?
man.
The other one is just like, this is a hard
That's good to bring up too, because I don't think people really think about that too much either.
one.
Like when you got valid arguments on both sides, fairly decent people on both sides,
Mhm.
but uh drastic drastic contrast in opinions
Yeah.
about what's best.
Honestly, it's only about 10 to 15% of my custody cases that I would characterize as those kinds of cases. But when they come up, they're the ones that give me stress, like the night before, a couple days before, I'm out planning my argument, and I'm like, I'm gonna give my best pitch. I have no idea how it's going.
Yeah. I touch on that in the book a little bit, just about, sometimes me and my kids' mind, we just disagree on what's best. And I have to remind myself that there's a ton of parenting decisions I'm going to make, and I got to figure out what hills I'm going to die on
Mhm.
and or I'm willing to die on. I'm like, okay, maybe I have a very strong opinion about this, but how much is that going to really matter in the grand scheme of my child's life, this
Right.
decision? So maybe I give the other parent a swing at it. All right.
Yeah.
Um, and we see how it goes. And then, then we play it by ear. Like I
Yeah.
got to really pick and choose my battles. And that's sometimes that can be tough.
Well, it's just smart that you're doing that you're thinking that way and analyzing it that way, picking your battles, right? Instead of just battling, like,
Yeah.
oh, we disagree, so let's go to war. Well, is it really worth the fight in this case? I do the same thing with my ex. There are things that I'm just like, you know what, not the way I would have rolled, but okay, it's just not worth it,
Yeah.
and other things where no, I'm putting my foot down, not agreeing to that. And she does the same thing. I could tell she does the same thing. She just like, okay, Brian, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
And I could tell she's not happy, but um, she's not gonna push it any further.
Yeah. That's good, man. It's a beautiful thing to have, man. Like I got to think about.
Everybody can have it if they can, you know, get
I,
over themselves.
yeah, much easier said than done, right? Like
Right. Right.
I gotta think about the longevity of my co-parenting relationship. My kids are 9 and 10 right now, and if I give a little here, that helps me out in the future with a decision maybe that I want.
Right.
Helping her, and she's more willing to compromise in the future. And I gotta give a little and think about the long term. Um,
Well,
play the
the thing
long.
to me is it really starts out, honestly, like before conception. It's like if you are ever going to put yourself in a position where conception can happen, you really got to be asking yourself. And I know people don't. No one does this, right? I literally did my whole life, like I did, and maybe that just makes me weird. But
Mhm.
before I ever put myself in a position where that could possibly happen, things weren't certain mechanisms weren't employed. It was only with someone who I thought really deep in my head. I said, "Is this person the person I want to co-parent with for the next 20 years?" If there's somebody I couldn't do that, it's a no go. Like it's
Mhm.
just a no go because that could happen, and there you are. And if
Yeah.
people really considered that, from the very beginning, that this would be a very different world.
Yeah.
Family court would probably not even exist. It would be like part of just regular civil court because there wouldn't be that many cases.
Yeah.
Um, but no one thinks about that. They don't
Right.
think about I want to co-parent with this person. They just think about I want this person, and that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So when it comes to developing a schedule, right? What would you say are some of the things that people need to be willing to just like, if they're in a battle, right? What are some things that people need to think about just like letting go of? Um,
Hmm.
you know, and that's like really kind of like stressing people out and just to help them think about it from a different perspective.
Well, it's hard to answer because it's going to be different in every case. But
Yeah.
I would say if I had to come up with some generalizations that apply to a lot of cases, then I would say some of those extra custody orders, the ones that don't have to do with timeshare or parenting plans specifically, but things like I know this has come up a lot before, but first right of refusal, um, rules regarding um, dating partners or whether you can drink, and that only severe alcoholism and a history and stuff like that. I get that, but in situations where you're just like, oh, he likes to drink or she likes to drink, it's like, okay, but do you really need a rule in your parenting plan? Do you really want to duke it out over something like
Yeah.
that? I don't want the kids around this person. Well, is that person really dangerous or do you just not like
Yeah.
them? Again, if those things are the things that are holding up the whole,
Hmm.
then maybe you can let it go. But
Yeah.
again, every case is different, though. Some of these things are in there for a reason.
Yeah.
So,
So because I touch on that too. Let's talk a little bit about first right of refusal because
sure. Everybody loves that one.
because I don't
The crowd pleaser.
personally, I don't like it. Like
Mm,
I don't like the idea of it. Maybe in certain circumstances, like just speaking in general terms.
right.
Um, I don't like the idea of it because it can be like really inconvenient
Hmm.
and it can, it's like for me, it gets into the realm of treating the kids like a piece of property. And it's like, okay, if I have something going on for the weekend that I have the kids, can they stay with my mom? Like maybe they want to see their grandparents. They want to hang out, like why should, my kids should be allowed to develop a relationship with their grandparents and extended family as long as they're loving and treating the kids well. Like,
Right.
I just think it's, I don't know, it can cause more harm than good or more issues than it does anything. Like,
Yeah.
but
The funny thing about first right of refusal is the people that love it, and the people that hate it really hate it. There's not a lot of middle ground there.
yeah,
When I first started practicing family law, it made perfect sense to me. I was a believer. You know, um, clients wanted it in there. They didn't ask about it. I checked that box. Of course, you first right of refusal. Makes perfect sense. Um, and then as I started to see what it was doing in parenting plans, how it was affecting co-parenting relationships, I realized this is just if here's my if you're the kind of if you have the kind of co-parenting relationship where you need first right of refusal, chances are first right of refusal is an even worse idea than if
Mhm.
you didn't need it. What I mean by that is if you need to micromanage the other person's parenting time that much, then first right of refusal is going to be really hard because um, you are going to now be communicating with them about their parenting time and what they're doing. I mean, you got to think about it logistically. What does first right of refusal just means? If I can't have the kids for a period of time, and you can put that period of time, that box is empty, right? You could write 4 hours, right?
Yeah.
12 hours. I've seen it as much as I had one case where it was 48 hours, and that was just because dad traveled a lot for his job. So the idea was if he was going to be gone that long, then it couldn't just be his wife that took care of the kids. Then mom would get the kids. That's an extreme example, but whatever
Yeah.
time that, usually it's more like a 4 to 8 hour time frame. What does that mean? Okay, mom's going on a date, right?
Hmm.
Now she's got to call dad, right, and say, I need you to, according to our order, I got to tell you, I'm going to be out for over 4 hours. Do you want the kid? And dad's going to be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's none of your business. Well, I should know what you're up to. What are you horning
Yeah.
again? Are you going to the city again, doing your thing? I know how you are. Now you've got, now you
Mm.
got the fight, right? The fight is on. Um, all the things that you're trying to avoid in a co-parenting relationship. And the same thing with mom. Dad might call and be like, "Oh, what are you doing? You're going drinking with your friends again, just like you always do. You're probably going to come home drunk. Mark. That's the way.
Yeah.
That's the way you are. You still going to be inebriated when you come home and you're responsible
Yeah.
for the kids?" Um, the only time that I see it maybe justified is where you have a parent who's notorious. You have those cases, every family law attorney has, where one parent, I won't pick a gender, I'm going to be really try to be really careful and not say a gender,
Yeah. I
even
hear
though
you.
it's almost always this gender, but that has the kid like 1 day a week, Saturday from like 8 to 4. And what do? They take the kid, they pick them up, they give them to grandma, and then they go do whatever it is that they want to do.
Yeah.
And then they come back and get the kid and drop them off. And mom, I did it. The other parent knows this. I'm sorry. It happens. It happens
Yeah.
all the time.
Yep.
I can't help it. I'm sure it happens the other way too. Okay. May have culpa. I'm sure it happens the other way.
But I mean,
This is 90% of the time.
there are
This is
things
the
that happen on more, definitely more sides than the other. Like
yeah,
I get
yeah,
it.
yeah. And so yes, in that case, look, you only have 8 hours a week. If you can't spend those whole 8 hours with your kid, you should not have your kid. Like that's ridiculous. Um, or find a different time that works better, if that time's not working. I can see in that case where it might be helpful. But honestly, what I'll tell sometimes the parent in that situation, once the first review goes, so look, it is only 8 hours. And if 8 hours with grandma, grandpa, well then are the kids having a good time with grandma? Well, yeah, they're fine. Do you have any safety issues with grandma? No, they like going, they have fun, they love it. Then what's the problem?
Yeah.
Really, what's the problem? Like,
Yeah.
so you're co-parenting with grandma. Join the club. It happens all the time. If your kids are having fun, they're getting enriched by it, then do we really need to go to court? So again, in 99% of cases, just either not necessary or more harmful than the benefit you might get out.
Yeah. I love that. It sounds like it's one of those things that in theory, like it sounds good, but you don't think of all the residual effects that are gonna come if you choose that decision. It's like, um, it sounds really good. Like I'm their parent. I should have first right of refusal, right? It's not it can even be it sounds harmless.
Right.
But there's just like some residual effects that come into play that most people probably aren't thinking about.
Yeah. Again, yeah, it's down on paper. It looks fine. But anybody, any first year family law attorneys can be like, first right of refusal. I got you. Anybody doing it for more than 3 or 4 years is going to be like, please don't ask for that again. Please just stop. Just stop.
I think people need to hear that. And
Yeah.
because I think what I've seen and like people get caught up as soon as a breakup happens, people are like the emotion has you getting caught up into what your rights are. Um and you know, you got to get past that to figure out okay, really feel like fuck my rights, but
Mhm.
where do my rights align with what's best for my children?
Mhm.
All right. Because man, whatever my rights are may not even be what's best for my kids. So like, damn, like really, does it even matter what your rights are? If it
Yeah.
like it's really should be when I'm factoring in these decisions, it's about what's in the best interest of my children.
Yeah, there's a reason that could and should are two different words. Just
Hmm.
because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something.
Right, right.
You have to ask both questions.
Man, that's I know people are there's a lot of people who they say like courts are biased against dads and or what there's a lot of fathers rights activists out there that just like hate the family court system and like I don't know how much you want to talk about this, but I'm interested in what like just your thoughts and what you see when it comes to these type of topics, um, and if you're comfortable
Well,
talking about that.
sure. I mean, um, I think that there are plenty of outcomes that very much seem unfair to dads in certain cases. Um, I think most of those outcomes are born not out of prejudice, but likely because of the history of that parent's relationship with the kids. You know, they come out of a marriage or a relationship where they weren't really on top of things with the kids and the mom was, and they suddenly springboard into, well, then I want 50-50. I want this, I want that. And it's like, well, you weren't before. So why is that the right thing now? Again, that's that whole could or should thing. Like you might have the right to it, but is it the right thing for the kid? Um, so I think the prejudice isn't the court; it's the situation
Mm,
that they find themselves in. But it's typically a situation that they put themselves
yeah.
in. Also, I'll be honest with you, the biggest prejudice that I see in family court. Now, I will say I have seen outcomes where I'm like, if mom had done the same things that that dad just was found to have done, probably the consequences might not have been as severe as they were for dad. I have seen,
Yeah.
I'll admit that. But here's the flip side of it. The stuff that we expect of mom, we don't really expect mostly from dads. Like we give dads so much rope um,
Yeah, I agree.
because the courts are so concerned with making sure things are equal, things are 50-50, that there's so much more leeway for whatever issues dad might have. Um, and whereas if mom does something that has some minor hiccup, like she didn't send the diaper bag when they exchange the kids, like the court comes down on mom like a ton of bricks. Like, are you
Mm.
kidding me? You didn't send the diaper bag. And it's like dad wouldn't even know how to pack the diaper bag if you gave him a manual to do it.
Yeah,
And here we are talking for an hour in court about how mom didn't send the diaper bag with the kid.
yeah,
So uh, there are prejudices. It's inevitable because we're human. We've developed, genealogically to have prejudice. So, and of course our own life experience.
yeah.
Um,
But it's
all
on both
kinds of
sides.
prejudices, whether it's mom, dad, um, you know, uh, man, woman, black, white. We have prejudice. It's a part of who we
Yeah,
are. Um, but when it comes to that, I think that there's enough prejudices to go both
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so it's on both sides, but in different ways and in different forms.
ways. Hmm.
When you see people are making poor decisions in regard to scheduling and what's best and best is interest of the child, what are some of the best methods that you've seen have worked to getting that person to see, you know, something from a logical perspective?
Um, you mean somebody who? So if I have somebody who doesn't seem to be sort of coming to the table on something that I'm trying to sell them, and how do I show them the light, kind of
Yeah,
a
yeah.
thing. The reason that's a tough question to answer is because I mean usually it I mean I usually try to come up with as many metaphors as I can.
Hmm.
I might use a movie. I'm like, have you ever seen blah blah blah, or I'll come up with an example of a case. I'll be like, you know what you're asking about, I tried that in another case, and here's what happened. Um, so I mean, I'll use any method in my toolkit
Yeah.
to do it. Um, but it sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't,
Mm.
and you just gotta uh, roll with
So I know we talked about we talked about first right refusal, right? But what is and you told me how you felt about it in the beginning, the post how you feel about that now. Is there anything else? Are there any other areas that you thought like, when it came to developing a schedule or something like that, that you when you started, when you became a lawyer, you was like, man, I think this makes sense. But like where have your opinions changed over time um from what you've seen?
Wow. Well, I brought up earlier, I brought up like the no drinking during your parenting time. That for some reason that made sense to me. And then I became a parent and I was just like, well, if we go to a barbecue or whatever and I have a beer, suddenly I'm a horrible parent. Like, when did that start happening? Like,
Yeah.
that's all my parents did when we had barbecues when I was a kid and everybody had fun. Like, it's no big thing. Very much so, I have changed my opinion about, I very early on had this attitude that if a parent is still trying to be a part of their kid's life in any way, shape, or form, then that should be allowed to happen.
Mm,
More recently, I've come to the conclusion that there are a number of strikes that people should have.
mm,
And if you can't make yourself uh, a decent parent by a certain amount of time, I think the court should come down on you and say, that's enough. You've tried. You tried, batter's intervention. You tried reunification counseling. We tried family counseling, and those kids want nothing. They don't want anything yourself.
yeah.
And all I'm doing right now is harming them. Every FaceTime call you make with them, every visit with them, it's just further harming the kids. And so, yes, you are their parent, legally speaking, but uh, parenting time with your kids is something I'm going to wait for them to inform the other parent or this court that they're ready for that. And until then, have a nice life. And I never thought I would ever say something like that before,
Mm,
but I finally come to the conclusion that I think we need to, as a profession, we need to start adopting that mentality because I think the mentality of we always got to keep we need second chances and third chances and fourth chances because well they're the parent, so maybe they were maybe they were out of it for this long and then addicted for this long and then abusive for this long, but the kid's still 10. They're 10 now, and these last 8 years we can still sort of shoehorn that parent in somehow, reunification counseling and maybe just some FaceTime calls or Zoom calls. That'll work. I'm like, yeah, but has anybody asked the kid if they
yeah.
want any part of this? Um, so that's changed for me a lot recently.
I love that. Like, and I agree. You only get a certain amount of chances before you just keep, re-injuring this person's like emotions and their like
Yeah, and taxing the other parent and
yeah,
their bandwidth to care for the kid, taxing the court system.
yeah,
Um, you know, uh, we've all got to. There's other cases where there's way more better work we can do.
yeah,
You've had all your chances, used them all. It's we got to move on.
yeah. And then when the kid gets old enough, let them decide if they want to.
Absolutely, they come seek you out. Maybe you'll be in a better place. They'll be in a better place. You can work out whatever you couldn't find yourself to work out
Yeah.
back then.
It's like we try to teach our kids, man, like your actions have consequences.
Mhm.
Right? Like and that shit can expire.
Yeah,
Like it's just like any relationship. You keep wrong, treating me wrong. I get to decide I don't want this anymore.
yeah.
Like I don't want you in my life. You're not beneficial to it. How are you doing this?
Hmm.
Like,
Most kids are smart, and they know that.
yeah, I like that. Um, okay, cool, man. I love it, man. I'm loving the conversation, man. I think I mean, you always have valuable stuff, man. I watch your stuff on TikTok, man. Like
Thanks.
and you seem like just a pretty level-headed guy. And I think a lot of people can benefit from that, from from your insight and your
Well, I
experience.
appreciate it. You asked some really good, thought-provoking questions, so thank you.
Um, like, I like to ask that kind of cliche type of question at the end, like what would you leave people with, man? Like if you had some like really good nuggets, when it comes to like scheduling your or anything, man, you just your thought prep, the way people should be thinking when they're developing these schedules or co-parenting. What are the nuggets that you want to leave people with?
The biggest thing, and keeping it to the topic of scheduling, the biggest thing I would say is picture yourself being your kid's age doing this schedule before you propose it, before you think about proposing
Mm,
it or agreeing to it the other way around. Think about yourself being that age. You were that age one time too. And how would that schedule have impacted you? And is that something that would be benefit? And not in this, and now remember, you're not that kid. You're this kid with these parents in this life. Does that schedule work? And
mm,
if you can, even if it does, okay. But if you do that, and you'll likely see a couple of problems. If you see no problem with it whatsoever, then that probably means you're a little too uh, rosy-eyed on it. You need to think about it. There's always going to be a hiccup or two.
yeah.
Um, and but if you can smooth over those bumps and say, okay, no, this is the best plan, then okay, great. But at least walk a mile in your kid's shoes before you set them on that path.
I like that. I like that, man. Because yeah, people don't do that enough. Put yourself in somebody else's shoes,
Mm.
and put yourself. Like think about yourself as a kid, man. Like this shit ain't about you. get,
Right.
get over yourself. Um, and that's like I thought. Like I had some people tell me like I shouldn't have called it. Like it's not about you. Like here's my book. Uh, like some people saying like it should be like a co-parenting one-on-one, or like have co-parenting should be in the title, but like I don't know, it just didn't call to
I
me.
like that title. It's a good title.
Like it's not about you, man. Like
Yeah.
get your shit together.
Yeah.
um
Exactly.
but man, you got a huge following on TikTok, man. Tell people where they can find you, what you
Oh,
do.
sure. It's just Bry, my first three letters of my first name, Bry, the Family Guy, at TikTok. So you just go on there and you'll find videos. Some of them are helpful, some of them are just funny. They're
Yeah, you
just
got some funny
humorous.
stuff too.
Um, I try to mix it up with both. It depends if people send me good questions or something happens in one of my cases where I'm like, oh, that would be helpful information I can distribute. Sometimes I find new things about family law. Something will come up in a continuing education class I go to. I'm like, well, I didn't even know that was the role.
Yeah.
Maybe my followers would find this interesting. So, or sometimes it's just I see one of those memes that come up. And I'm just like, oh, I can do a funny video that's related to family law about it. But anyway, yeah, come follow me on there. You know, promise not to offend you too much.
What state are you practicing in?
California,
In
California, and my
California.
website's on the TikTok thing, so pakpourbanks.com. But you can just click the link on the TikTok page. It'll
Okay,
take
yeah.
you there.
Yeah, hit him up. Follow him on TikTok, Bride Family Guy. Man, he's got some good information out there. He's funny. Um, your son, I saw a video you doing live. You and your son playing chess. Like that's cool. I'm a big fan of chess. My son,
Oh,
he likes
cool.
my son likes to play. He ain't that good at it, but like I don't know if he's gonna be a chess player, but he likes to play like just to bond with me, and I think it's cool.
It
Uh,
is it is really cool when you can play chess with your kids, do stuff like that. That's the good stuff. That's why you do it. It's so fun. It's so
yeah.
fun.
I think my daughter would be better at it, but like because she's got the mind for it, but she doesn't. She's more timid. She's afraid to like make a mistake. Like
Oh yeah,
she like overthinks, and like
right,
she don't want to get caught in a
right,
situation where she gotta make a mistake. Like, but my son don't care. He just out there moving pieces. He just like
right.
it's just about bonding.
That's good. Take a chance. That's good.
Yeah, but yeah, man, that was great information. By the time this episode comes out, the book is gonna be available. To on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, and ship right away. It's not about you. Um, 10 Principles for a Strong Co-Parenting Foundation so you and your children can thrive. Brian, man, thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thank you. Good luck with the book.
Always for the insight, man. And